And I also wanted to bring up, sir, the fact that Ukraine. I mean, this is not something I had on my bingo card. Is actively engaged with Iran. That you talk about this thing and the drones and the changing platforms we have as far as warfare goes. We're seeing things that I never would have anticipated when this started in Ukraine, 5 years ago?
Yeah, and you might see more stuff tomorrow too. But look, here's a couple of things. First of all, let's remember Zelensky just came to Washington and met with Trump and reported it was a successful meeting. Over the last several weeks, President Trump has been very supportive of Ukraine, which he wasn't before. You remember the blow up in the White House over a year ago where Vance and Trump both attacked Zelensky. Now we're at a 180-degree reversal on that. People are now supporting Ukraine, and I think that's a very good thing. Look, I just want to say one thing. I'll turn it back to you. Your listeners did to remember that there's one overriding principle here, and that is the Russians, the Chinese, and the Iranians want to change the international situation and eliminate the United States from being the dominant power that we are. And everything else flows from that, including your discussion, by the way, about the Ukrainians attacking Iranian ships in the Caspian Sea. That's just another example of that.
Okay. Let me pick up from there, and I'll bring back what we were talking about in our last segment, which is the need for more countries to join in the United States in this battle to keep the Strait of Hormuz open, and then ultimately not allowing Iran to have a nuclear weapon. So as I see this, it's the United States, and let's be honest, the United States did not go looking for allies when they started this situation. I'll call it a situation with Iran that's blown into now a regional. It's becoming, and if not, has already become a regional conflict. Didn't look for a lot of help outside of Israel. Now that this is going on, where does that help come from? If the axis of evil, or whatever you want to call it, Iran, Russia, China, want to change the world, what about all these other countries that have been allies of the West? Don't they realize that if China, Russia, and Iran rule the world, that means the United States gets knocked down? That void is going to be filled by somebody, and it's not going to be somebody benevolent to NATO or other countries that have aligned with the U.S. for the last 50 years.
Well, again, in my op-ed piece, I've taken the position that this is the moment when we might try more countries worldwide to climb on board here and reassert their interests, not just ours, as to the rights of navigation and the movement of goods and services and oil across the world. Look, the assertion at this point is that Putin is helping the Iranians target the United States bases in the Middle East, where they are, in fact, attacking, and some American soldiers, as you know, have been killed and a lot more have been wounded, and that Putin is really directing that. The president said, well, he'll ask Putin about that point, but the point is Putin's going to lie about that. It is what it is. And our intelligence people, I hope, are still sufficiently able to figure that out for President Trump. But the point is that, Iran is now sending drones and those kinds of war munitions back to Russia in return. And the Ukrainians say, we're not going to tolerate that. So they attack the Iranian ships. So it's now all beginning to unravel across the Middle East and in Europe, and things are being joined together. And of course, the Chinese are checking in. She told Trump he wouldn't send any munitions, but now he is. This thing is continuing to go. Look, I want to be real optimistic about this. At the end of the day, the United States is still the most powerful country in the world, and we have the right values and principles that draw people to us. And my just position is that, let's use that as a political tool here. People want to be for the United States. Don't go it alone. Get more and more people to help us.
When you talk about the Chinese and the Russians helping Iran, we help Ukraine. Should we expect them? I mean, again, all of these we don't call them our adversaries, but they are. I mean, should we not expect them to return the favor since we've helped Ukraine directly in their fight with Russia? Wouldn't we expect the same to come back from Russia, or is that something that we find unreasonable?
No, I think that the Russians and the Chinese and the Iranians will act in their national interest, and that's our obligation to do the exact same thing. We talk a lot about America first. Let's remember that that's what we're doing here. We're trying to protect the people of the United States in this global conflict that, by the way, we didn't start. Putin did this invasion, just hauled off and did it in order to try to intimidate and change the situation in Europe, something which I know something about as the former ambassador over there. And that really ignited a lot of this. And then the attack of the Americans and the Israelis on the Iranians at this point in this moment in time has now ignited the Middle East. And yes, they are joined together. In fact, I've taken the position with you and everybody for years that this stuff is all part of one global war. And as soon as we recognize that, we're going to be okay here. If the United States is well led, we're going to be okay here. But you can't minimize the challenges that we're facing right now.
Speaking of leadership, I'm going to throw you a little bit of a curveball because I did want to ask you about this. Lindsey Graham. Losing Lindsey Graham is someone who was a staunch defender of Ukraine and was so adamant. And it looks like they're going to get this major package and thing done against Russia. How can you reflect for just a moment on the leadership that Lindsey Graham had in pushing back against Russia and helping stand up for Eastern Europe and Ukraine?
I was acquainted with Senator Graham. He and I stood together on the stage in 2016 when I was making an effort on the presidency, and so was he. Neither one of us, of course, succeeded. We know that, but I was acquainted with him. Look, Senator Graham, and certainly in recent years, was a very strong supporter of Ukraine. I thought that Senator Graham was not entirely consistent over his career, and you can go back and study all that. But it's true that anything that the Americans can do to move this thing in the right direction in Europe is the right thing to do. And it is working that way. The Ukrainians are winning this war. I've been talking about it now for 4 years on this show, and I'm pleased to say things are moving in the right direction. But Russia is now at bay, and they're very dangerous. And they're doing things that are very disturbing. They're increasing their military manpower. That's all they got, and that's what they're doing. And they're increasing their army size, and they haven't quit because Putin is delusional, and he intends to try to expand Russia if he can. And Ukraine must be his very first step. So that war is still going to go on for a while, but I think the Ukrainians are winning this, and Russia is no longer able simply to commit war crimes with impunity.
Well, it's so interesting when you look at, I don't know how the Iranians think that they're going to win this thing in the end. The United States didn't let the dog off the chain yet, and I don't know if we're going to, but if they did, it would be over in a day. If you had the Marines
No.
Okay.
No. We're not talking about a military conflict here. That's what we all hear, and that's, of course, what you're hearing and what you're reacting to. The political issue is who's going to control the Strait of Hormuz? Who's going to, and the Iranians have said, we're going to control it, we're going to charge tolls, and we're going to say who's going to go in and out. That political point is the key to this fight.
So let me go back to what we talked about, where I see J.D. Vance trying to get this thing done through diplomacy. I think Marco Rubio is being more of a hawk. If the Rubio, and I'm just using those as an example of, I think, the different voices you have in the administration, if you went all out and just said, you know what, we're done, we're not going to talk anymore, we're going to go through like Schwarzkopf and just take the whole darn thing out. The Iranians have to know that that's a possibility out there. Putin has to know that he's not winning this thing and it's not going the right way. And if you have to come in and bring in 30,000 North Korean troops, and we've seen that they haven't been very effective over there backfilling the Russian army, how do you negotiate with people like that, like you said, have delusions?
Well, you also have to remember, the listeners here, that everybody talks about getting to the negotiating table, forcing to the negotiating table. Remember, the negotiating table is just a place where diplomacy is going to decide what the ultimate agreements are. If you go to the negotiating table with the Russians and give up Ukraine, that's not a very good thing to have happen. If you go to the negotiating table with the Iranians and they end up still being able to control the Strait of Hormuz, that ain't a very good result. And to your point, look, if the U.S. just unleashes everything, if that can stop the Iranians from controlling that strait today or next year or 5 years from now, that's a good thing. But I think that in the end, a political agreement would be better. And I'm just saying that we need to put more resources on our side of the table so that we can get a good conclusion. That's all I'm pointing to.
No, 100%. I was reading Jim Mattis's book, rereading portions of his book the other day, and he pointed out that in his book, and this book's several years old, that Iran has always threatened the Strait of Hormuz. So it's something that, again, the world has to figure out what they're going to do and how we go forth on that. Sir, one more time, the op-ed that you wrote was brilliant. If people want to read it, how do they get a copy of it? How can it be forwarded to them?
Yeah, I'll take care of that if they'll send me an email, which is gilmoreambassador@gmail.com. I'll try to show you what I've been trying to say and try to just make a contribution to the discussion. I'm not official at this point in any way, but I'm trying to make a discussion through the media here and beyond. I was on the BBC the other day. I'll be on the conservative network OAN tomorrow at 12. And I'm just trying to push things in the right direction. And, I don't claim to know everything or everybody, but I'm trying to get as much information as I can and weave it all together. And this is an ongoing battle. Go ahead.
I just think we're fortunate that we've been able to have this discussion with you. Like you said, how in the world has this Ukraine war gone on so long that immediately when it happened, you thought, okay, it'll be rolled over in a week. Now you see it where nobody had it, that they would have thought that Ukraine could have survived, much less pushed back the Russian bear, that they're having to go out and get conscription troops from North Korea. I'm just fascinated every time we get a chance to talk to you on Thursdays.
Well, look, there are positive things going on here. The Trump reversal to now support Ukraine is very positive. The United States support of Ukraine at the very beginning was very essential to prevent the Russians from overwhelming Ukraine. But remember, Ukraine is fighting for their lives. The Russians are fighting for conquest, but the Ukrainians are fighting for their existence. So they're going to be tough. And right now, the Europeans have been stepping up and helping them. And look, there's new developments this week. Trump has said that the Ukrainians can develop their own Patriot missiles with American help. That's real positive.
That's huge.
Zelensky came in and asked for Patriots the other day at the White House. I got a positive message. That's good news. So this thing is moving in the right direction in Europe. But meanwhile, we're distracted by this ongoing battle and open war that we've got in the Middle East.
Sir, thank you very much. I'll catch up with you next week.
I'll be right here, and thanks for the opportunity.
Absolutely. Governor Jim Gilmore, Ambassador Jim Gilmore, joining us here on News Radio WRVA. Today's program brought to you in part by A+ Roofing. All right. You're happy. We got sunshine for the next few days, which means you don't have to worry about your roof. You know you need to get the shingles replaced, and you've just been waiting. And then you get hit over the head, everybody and their brother